all these people that are busy crying all over the show at universities, these kids, relax. You're currently being taught nonsense by your woke universities. And I just feel as though if you gained proper context, you might be less resentful of Israel and less hateful of Christianity and less hateful as well of the colonizer and Black Lives Matter and all of y'all's uprooting of statues of colonizers of old. Yeah, they had their issues, but you really want to thank them. And herein lies the deal. Why I say that. As a black person, scratching her face all the way from South Africa, persecuted by ancestral worshippers that are trying to disregard what the colonizer did up in our monster as well. Mamelang. Listen now, random people with no context. Don't wish me dead, okay? Because I'm out here unleashing some bullets. Anyway, listen up, okay? I need to find a more comfortable way to sit, Lana. Alright, let's think about the empires of the world. Prophesied again in the Bible. I mean, if you just read the book of Daniel, you should repent and give your life to Jesus Christ. Because the book of Daniel was written before history itself was written that proved the book of Daniel true. The statue of Nebuchadnezzar of which was a pagan king. And yet his vision made its way inside the book of God, the Bible. The God of the universe spoke a vision to a pagan king, evidencing that he's the one true God. And this one true God literally gave history in the run-up to it happening. All up in your grill. Just that statue of Nebuchadnezzar alone should cause all these university students who are smart but currently ignorant to just down tools on their pro-Palestinian protests. Because that vision of Nebuchadnezzar that was then ultimately dreamt by Daniel and then interpreted by Daniel after Nebuchadnezzar forgot it, okay? Spoke about the empires of the earth that would come and go all the way up until the end. And guys, it's happened hand to glove. It's happened hand to glove. Starting with the Medo-Persian Empire, Yaga Nebuchadnezzar, right there in Babylon where he was at. Followed by the Grecian, followed by the Roman, and then the revived Roman Empire, which is the part clay, part iron, and what have you. That's ultimately going to be crushed by one stone, rock of offense, who is Jesus Christ, and then establish a millennial reign on the earth for 1,000 years. It's happened hand to glove. Others might be like, then Karaba, how do you account for the what shall I call this thing? The British Empire. The British Empire and even the US of A are part of the Roman Empire. That is why it is written or speculated or come to the conclusion that the Antichrist is going to come from a revived Roman Empire. And everybody who says America is not in Bible prophecy, they're not, because they are sort of kind of clumped in to the Roman Empire. We know that America is the big mighty power that it is right now, because in and of itself it was lambasted by the colonizer, right? They had Native Americans up in that monster. All of y'all that are complaining about the colonizer. So let's think about Native Americans, all right? Idol worshippers in the worst way. They sought also somewhere over the rainbow when they were sitting in the US wondering, is there a God? And some gods appeared to them. So there's like a lot of paganism in Native American culture. The Brits, right, who were the British Empire at the time, explored the earth and roamed these streets with their Bibles and stuff. And then they founded America as we know it on Christianity, because that's what they had. That's what they knew. So Britain was strongly Christian, and then it came and lodged in America and created America as we know it today. And so it smothered, what you call, guys, smothering the religion of the Native Americans. America's main religion now is not Native American, like pagan religion that a lot of them are still holding on to right now. It is Christianity. It is Christianity. So that's what you're crying about. That's what there at Harvard you're crying about. That's what in all these other universities lamenting, you're crying that these colonizers, if it wasn't for these rubbishes coming here to force this stupid agenda down our throats, the Native Americans would still worship their gods. All of America would still be embracing that God. Africa would still love their ancestors. Look at how much there's so much division in India. The Christians are being persecuted because why did they convert in the first place? South Korea will still be worshipping random gods. China, there wouldn't be so much Christian persecution if these stupid colonizers didn't even try to talk to them.
And as for Europe, what exactly was wrong with Zeus? What was wrong with Hercules? What was wrong with Greek mythology? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And now look at us sitting in the Middle East. Now all of a sudden, Iran has got the largest growing church in the Middle East. Why? It's these colonizers. They evangelized Iranians, so of course we have to behead them. Why didn't you just leave us alone to create our own religion as Ishmael? And it's because of you, Israel. You started Christianity. And now they're in Afghanistan. They're in Lebanon. They're in Syria, even though we keep on slapping them with the law. We keep telling them it's illegal to convert to Christianity, and they're still doing it. Now they're in Turkey. They were the first to embrace this nonsense, the Turkians. What must we do? First they go to Europe, and we think, okay, whatever, you don't like Zeus, you can stay in Europe. But then you went to Africa. And then you went to Asia. And then you went to Australia. What did they ever do? You should have left the Aborigines alone. And then you went to Canada. You went to America. And then after all that time, we thought we were safe in the Middle East. And then next thing, Iran is the biggest growing church in the world. Now they're in the Middle East. Why didn't they just stay in Europe? These colonizers.
That's what these students are actually crying about in Harvard. That's what these students are actually crying about all over the show. They're crying that the colonizer did not leave them in peace. They're crying that God Almighty did not leave them in hell. They're crying that the Father in heaven did not leave them to perish. They're basically saying, God, why? Why did you insist on correcting my idol worship? They're crying. They are loathful, of the colonizer, because they're saying that it is the colonizer's fault that all these other global religions were disturbed in their slumber. They were disturbed in their peace. How dare you spread a revival in Africa? How dare you bring the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, and the God of Jacob into Africa? So Islam, you're jealous right now of that. Why? Because you still are maintained as the one Abrahamic religion that is utterly rejected. Not a single Muslim is in heaven. Not even one. Not even one. Not even one. Do you understand what I'm saying? Whereas there are Jews that are in heaven and there are Christians that are in heaven. Old Testament Jews and Messianic present Jews and, of course, truly saved Christians are in heaven. No one that has ever died professing Allah as God is in heaven. Every last one of them is in hell. And that level of rejection, when then you watch the whole world embrace the God that saved them from the thing that has deceived you, of course you're going to fight them. You are the chock-a-block currently that is spreading anti-Semitism across the world. You are the chock-a-block because you are deceived. You are deceived, and so you are going on to deceive. The Lord has come on the earth not to bring peace but a sword. You have made yourselves as Islam, as of course the nations around Israel that have made them a cup of trembling, that are trying to heave it away, and so you will be surely cut into pieces. You are being cut into pieces by the God of your father, because you have rejected the God of your father, even though he has awarded you an opportunity to come in just like the Gentiles, just like the adoptive son. God gave Islamists everybody basically of other global religions that are deceived. He gave all of them an equal opportunity to enter in, but you are by far the most arrogant and unprepared to repent people, because you belong to Abraham too. And so you want to prove desperately by force that you're the real religion. You're the one true religion. Even and that us and that we're mistaken. That we are mistaken. That Jews are mistaken. That Christians are mistaken. And in order to prove that, you are prepared to go to violent extremes. You are killing all over the show in order to prove that you are the one chosen son of Abraham, when you are rather the one that has been expelled. And not even a single one of your descendants, if at all they've held on to your spiritual guns, have entered heaven, while the descendants of Abraham from the Jewish side and Christianity, all of they're in heaven. There are others, they are accounted for in heaven, many of them. They've been accounted for in heaven. So if you think about that Babylonian that Nebuchadnezzar statue from the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, there was first the Medo-Persian Empire, and when it fell apart, who inherited world global dominance? It was Greece. Yeah, there where there was so many funny little gods. Yes, Zeus was one of them. Let me think. Greek gods like Icarus wasn't a god. Basically, Greek mythology, the Greeks are well known for their gods and goddesses. Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Isn't that Greek? I'm sorry, I have to blow my nose, etc. The Grecians, yeah. Greeks, we shall call them Greeks, that's what's good. Yeah, no, guys, they were opulent with false gods. Olympus was a Greek god. I believe the Olympics come from them, type thing. Fine, we can honor and respect that you have given us the Olympics. Thank God for athletics and healthy bodies, but ain't no need to worship any of that. That's what's good. The Greeks had all of these false gods, and guess what these guys did? As soon as Paul rocked up all up in the Gentile grill, they were like, I'll take it. The letters to the churches in the Lord's Word were all in Turkey, I believe. Ephesus and all that jazz. So essentially, the gospel was first taken into Greece and Turkey. So Europe. It went to Europe. To the colonizers. It went to Europe, guys. And it thrived and was well embraced. No persecution. Everything was going well. But the Romans conquered Greece. Roman occupation of Greece. The Romans violated Greece, took it over, and then that's where hard knock Christian persecution at unprecedented levels really started happening to the body of Christ, to the church, to Christians, and not so much Jews, right? So anti-Semitism had been happening all along. Abuse of Jews had been happening across the world, and I believe the Roman Empire was the first real bloodthirsty persecutor of Christians. Like the first real Christian violence was in Rome, right? They made Christianity illegal, etc. Because of course the Lord has come on the earth to bring peace, but not peace, sorry, but a sword. The Lord came upon the earth not to bring peace, but a sword. So here it is that there was this thriving Christian population. So what was happening over there? The devil, beginning of the ages, Adam and Eve, right? Sins causes Adam and Eve to sin. He then infiltrates the whole earth, now that everybody on the earth is sinning, and manifests to them all through all these menacing fallen angels that then get made gods of all of these nations. And so he's thinking, the whole earth is mine. Everybody that's dying currently is just going to hell. Everybody is going to Sheol when they die, and the earth belongs to him. He was given the earth as soon as Adam and Eve fell. He is currently actually known as the God of the world, of this world, right? So most people were just like, with no knowledge of God and not even seeking him out properly. Upon seeking God out, even though their consciences were beating on them, they were without excuse. The invisible qualities of God were there. They still went with fallen angels, even though their consciences were beating on them. And they had a bad feeling about it, type thing, right? And then the Christ comes, and then he focuses his energy He's of course persecuting very much and creating division and causing the people of God prior to Christ, right, to sin against God, eat food sacrificed to idols, Balaam's era, like all these things are happening. Foreign gods, the people of God worshipping foreign gods, having Ashtoreth poles erected in Israel. The kings of God are all evil and sinning, blah blah, most of them, and there's only a few that are doing what is right in the sight of the God. This is all happening prior to Christ, right? And then Christ comes on the scene, and then the devil focuses all of his attention on the Middle East, since he has deceived the entire planet to worship him elsewhere. And Jesus Christ is, of course, the person that has been prophesied to crush him, right, on the head, while he's going to strike the foot type setup thing. So then he focuses his energies on the Middle East, and then fulfills prophecy by killing Jesus, thinking that he's neutralizing what he is going to do for the world at large. Alright? And then Jesus Christ decides to go and rise from the dead, and so conquer the serpent. And the devil is like, oh snap, that which I did actually brought about fulfilled prophecy. So from the moment Jesus rose from the dead, it was done. We conquered, right? It was done. Like now the gospel, what is this? The salvation of Adam and Eve was etched in stone. It was done. It was finished. He was conquered. Whatever it is that he started in the garden, Usatani, this was the beginning of the end for him. All right. So then what did he do? He persecuted Messianic Jews like no man's business, and made them so unpopular in the Middle East, made them so unpopular in Israel, that they got driven out. And the Lord saw it fit, given that his people were rejecting the gospel. He then, of course, that was the mission from the very get-go, sent it out everywhere else. So he raised up Paul. All the other epistles were martyred, trying to evangelize Jews that would come to Christ, and there wasn't many of them, right? A prophet has no honor in his own hometown, so Christ did not do very much evangelistic fiery things in Israel at the time. He then, however, it did a fiery thing in, in the Gentile nations. Among the Gentiles, it got very well received. That's why the New Testament is made up a lot of Paul's epistles to the Turkey, to Ephesus. What is this? The churches of the early church, the churches of the early church, the early church, the churches of the early church. What in the world? Yeah, the churches of the early church. It's actually a sentence that makes sense if you think adverbially. Anyway, whatever. Right. Paul did a work over them and proliferated the gospel into the Gentile generations. That was his job, and he reached the Grecians. He reached the Turks, and the church grew from there. And because God will always visit power, guys. 1 minute. God will always visit power over to anywhere at all where his people are thriving. If a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, he will make even his enemies to live at peace with them, and the Lord will always strive a people that are standing by his side. That's what's good. So God gave an empire. He gave empire status. He gave global dominance to Greece. He shifted it over from Babylon and gave it to Greece. As soon as Israel rejected its Messiah, they got scattered. They entered into wars. History basically did what it did with the Jews. They suffered quite a lot after rejecting their Messiah and even lost their land. But then the Grecians took the mantle from there. They took the mantle, and God made them a global empire. He made them a global empire. He made them strong. He succeeded them. He thrived them in a way that he would have thrived the Hebrews if they had stayed loyal to him. And this was one of the first things that was, I guess, a fulfillment of Romans 11, where God would make the people that were not his people, and then cause his own people to be jealous of them, basically causing the Hebrews to envy the Christians, because he had given prosperity to what they called a pagan nation, or a nation that did not honor God. One of those lost causes worth of nations. And here it is that God was giving them prosperity. So he gave prosperity to them, but because of the war, the clash that would inevitably happen against God's people, because the devil is always trying to thwart the gospel, there then came Roman occupation. Roman occupation of Greece took over Greece, conquered them, and then they became the empire. The Roman Empire was like a whole beast and a force to be reckoned with. One of the biggest persecutors of Christians. What is this? They were into random, rough, violent, really hard, not pagan stuff in Rome, in the sense that, like, gladiators, getting slaves to fight unto death. They were busy with stuff like that, and they had like a bright idea to do the same thing in the Colosseum with Christians, get them eaten by lions, all different kinds of stuff, dragged. If you just were to watch clips on YouTube of a movie done about Christian persecution in Rome, you would just bleed. Your heart would bleed. It was really bad during that time, and they illegalized Christianity. It became really terrible, so it looked as if the devil was now prospering to thwart the gospel, and it was not ever going to go anywhere. But remember, Turkey's still okay, and in with the horrible mistreatment of Christians, they nonetheless did not drop the ball. They did not walk away from Jesus, because it's a spiritual matter. Being born again, it's not a physical thing. That's why the church in Iran is still growing. Like, no matter how much you persecute, they still grow, because a calling from God cannot be ignored. A calling from God cannot be ignored. Those that the Father has given to the Son cannot be plucked out of his hands, and we are drawn to the Son by the Father. And so you can't just ignore a call to go to Jesus. You can't. And so people got saved even though there was a lot of persecution. And so what did God do? Because Christianity was still thriving underground in Rome, even though there was a lot of persecution, he raised up Constantine. And Constantine then was a Roman Empire that rocked up after Nero, after all of those gangstrosity empires that wreaked havoc in Rome, and basically said, no more. Like, Christianity is legal now, and rather Christian persecution is now illegal in Rome. So Constantine rescued the Christians in Rome from occupation by wicked emperors, and helped them be okay to practice. But unfortunately, with it too rose up the Roman Catholic religion, because the foreign gods, the fallen gods of Rome, the false gods of Rome prior to Christianity coming into that ecosystem, they didn't want to let them go. And so basically the papacy rose up. They came up with a brand spanking new version of Christianity. So basically Catholicism was born around that time. After Constantine, Catholicism rose up, and then years down the line, hallelujah, praise the Lord, we then were dealing with Martin Luther, who made an observation that, no, I'm sorry, this stuff here, this extra stuff they've put into Christianity is not the real deal. So Martin Luther made war with Catholic doctrine, and that brought about the Protestant Reformation later on. Martin Luther was an Englishman. Do you understand what I'm saying? Martin Luther was an Englishman, and so God then gave prominence to the British Empire. The Protestant Reformation, men like Charles Spurgeon, Martin Luther, they come from Europe, Great Britain. So Great Britain, the power from Rome was taken away. Their empire status, their global dominance, and that's where the statue of Nebuchadnezzar stopped. It never ever accounted for the British Empire or any of the other empires that came, because they all were part of the revived Roman Empire, including America. They all fell under the Roman Empire, because America is what it is today because of Great Britain. That's what's good. Now that you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, y'all, wada fish paste, etc. So the Protestant Reformation then gave the global dominance, because God will always concentrate his funding. He will always concentrate his mercy to a nation that honors him. So he gave global dominance away from Rome. He took it away from Rome, and then gave it to the UK. Well, Britain. Gave it to Britain, and the British Empire then flourished and grew and flourished and grew and flourished and grew. Now here it is that all of this global dominance is concentrated in Europe. All right, it is concentrated. It started in Greece, and then it moved to Rome, and now it is in the British Empire. It's in Britain, so it's all in Europe. So, when you grow and God thrives, you trade, industry, commerce, you build ships, you become an industrial powerhouse. That's what's good. And when you're an industrial powerhouse, you're going to explore. That's what's good. You're going to make like Alexander the Great, and you are going to look around. That's what's good. You're going to get on a boat because your name is Napoleon. Like, Europe at that time was generally thrived by God because it was embracing Christianity. Unfortunately, however, it was embracing Christianity with the Catholic, extra phalange or like appendage to it, right? So it was not the 100% real deal. However, the people who were holding on to the 100% real deal were the UK. Britain was holding on to the real deal, Christianity, instead of Catholicism. type thing. But Catholicism was thriving in Rome. I believe it was thriving also in France. It was thriving in other parts of Europe. And there was like a whole beefy thing after the Protestant Reformation between Christians and Catholics. There was like a whole war. But nonetheless, these are nations that are holding a Bible. These are nations that are holding a Bible. These are nations that are evangelistic, essentially. Even if they have got falsehood in portions of their doctrine with the Catholic doctrine, they have infiltrated this lie, right? And there is like a whole war between Catholicism and Protestant Christianity. Nonetheless, these nations in Europe are the ones that literally traveled everywhere. They went everywhere. They went to, Britain went to Britain went to Australia. It went to North America. It went to Africa, many parts of Africa. France went to many parts of Africa too with its Catholicism. Portugal went to parts of South America. Spain went to lots of parts of South America as well with the Catholic. Spain exported Catholicism a lot. Portugal, also Catholicism and Christianity. Britain, Christianity to Europe, Christianity to North America, which is the America that we now know today, which I imagine also infiltrated into Canada. And then South America was infiltrated by Portugal. It was infiltrated also by Spain and Argentina. Are they? No, I don't know. I stand corrected. But what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that trade and industry and commerce was burgeoned in Europe because they embraced the gospel. They were the first Gentiles to embrace the gospel. So no, guys, it's got nothing to do with skin color, I promise you. It had everything to do with the embracing of Jesus Christ. It was not a race thing. God did not choose white people to be the most powerful people on the earth. He chose Christians, or God's people, those who embrace him by honor, to be powerful. And it just so happened that those people clumped up in Europe were fair. They were white. They traveled into Europe and they embraced the gospel, and so God flourished them. So it is not that white people are smarter than everybody, that white people are more industrially adept, that they've got a better knack for, figuring things out, building railroads, trains, ships, inventing airplanes. It's not that white people are the only ones that can get the stuff right. It looks like innovation is concentrated among them, but the only reason why that innovation is concentrated among white people is because the gospel just so happened to first be embraced in an area where white people were flooded, so were domiciled. So it could have been Africa, but it wasn't. It could have been Asia, but it wasn't. It could have even been the Jews in the Middle East, but it wasn't. It was Caucasians in Europe, and it just so happens that the primary color, skin tone of Europe is Caucasian. So all of y'all's hatred of white folk, guys, they were the first Gentiles to embrace the gospel. Take it. Like I said, God is in heaven. He does whatever he pleases. Their white supremacy also spurred from there. Let's move to the next part. So the gospel, or God, not the gospel, what do I want to say? God himself gave himself to a colored, a people of color, right? Jews are not white. That's what needs to be understood. They're in the Middle East, they're olive skinned, right? So those are the first people that he chose. So as to help you understand that this ain't got nothing to do with race. He chose those olive skinned people in Europe, in the Middle East. All right, and those olive-skinned people are now the most hated in the world, despite their light skin complexion or their olive color. All right, they were the first to be chosen by God. They rejected the Lord, and then the Lord gave the gospel to whomever would be the first Gentile people to embrace him. And it just so happened to be Europeans. They were geographically located in an area that rendered their skin that tone. It was cold all the time, and so they got hair that was like this, and skin that was like what it is that it is, and they've got blue eyes and whatnot. But unfortunately, remember, we are born dead in trespasses and sins, and in sins did our parents conceive us. That's very unfortunate. Ever since Adam and Eve did a strange thing, the rest of us just did another strange thing. Yeah, so we continued to be ratchet. That's what's good as the human race. So wherever it is that human beings will be, there'll always be flaws in their ideology. The human beings, I like to call them babies, while all their insanity is bathwater. You cannot throw out the baby with the bathwater. And the devil is excellent at infiltrating heresy into truth. That's how he prospered to raise up Catholicism from an otherwise safe Christian zone, right? He, in Rome, here it is that Constantine abolishes Christian persecution, but then he introduces Catholicism. So the devil has always tried to, add tares among the wheat. He's always tried to add a little leaven that leavens the whole loaf. So human beings are like that leaven. And when we have the word of God, we try to leaven the whole loaf, but the word of God will ever be transcended across the ages, and nobody can thwart him and his work type thing. So people are sinners. God is not. God is holy. God is good. The devil is a deceiver, and the Lord made it clear that we're going to grow up with wheat among tares, and that we always need to be Berean, study the scriptures, make sure that we root out nastiness. So Martin Luther was raised up to root out nastiness out of Catholic doctrine, and so therefore clean up the original word, right? He gave us back Christianity, whereas the Romans had muddied it with Catholicism, but Catholicism still thrives. It is still thriving. Wheat is still growing among tares. False doctrine is still growing alongside sound doctrine, and that's going to happen all the way up until the end of the ages. Ours is to be discerning. Ours is to separate like darkness from light. Ours is to be able to weed out nonsense and stick with what is good. Keep the baby, throw out the bathwater. Martin Luther was able to separate the baby from the bathwater by bringing us back to true biblical Christianity. Right, but by then Catholicism had already ruined things. Now let's talk about the human nature. We're fallen, we're sinners, we're nasties. So here it is that we've got a whole continent thriving Christianity, a whole continent growing in Christ. The Lord is therefore prospering this continent that is Europe because it has embraced him. No one understands that the Lord's prospering of Israel, for instance, in the earlier days, he prospered it for his own sake, not because of anything that these people had done, but for proliferating his own word and for gathering himself a people. It was always for him, because these people never deserved it. But there is a holiness without which no one can see God. So there is always a barometer that God has put up to say, once you exceed in evil this particular level of holiness, I will abandon you as a people and I will scatter you among the nations. So if enough people are largely working by literally striving to stick with God, even though they're sinning, God's grace is abounding, but they are working to beat their flesh into submission, he will consider it an acceptable sacrifice, because we cannot not sin. It is impossible for us to not sin. But when people stop trying to eradicate sin and they are easily now gliding in idols, that's when he just abandons the country altogether, right? Europe was holding fast and striving for Christianity, even though they were sinning in very many parts. And that striving, God embraced it, accepted it as a holy sacrifice to them, even though they were not perfect, because no one can be perfect. God propitiates for our sins, past, present, and future. And he knows that we cannot do what is perfect, but there is a holiness, that a layer without which no one will see God. We can't be perfectly holy, but there is a holiness standard that God acknowledges in heaven as acceptable before him to enter into heaven, even though it's not perfect, for only Christ is perfect. If you're not striving unto this holiness, you're not going to make it in. You're not saved because the Holy Spirit is not working in you. So you obviously are evidencing with your works that you've never been born again. So when a nation in totality has got a holiness level that is pleasing to the Lord, even though there are some that are sinning, and even those that are striving against sin are still sinning, but they are standing in the gap and covering everybody else, God will bless that whole nation for his own name's sake, because he is proliferating his own agenda, even if these people don't deserve him, given that they keep sinning at all. Okay, now you've gauged that. So let's look at Europe then in those days. Europe had embraced the gospel, and they had a holiness level that was acceptable to God. He thrived them. They were largely Christian. Unfortunately, however, as human beings, we are sinners, and we've got biases that dwell inside us. And just as after Constantine's empire, abolition of Christian persecution, Catholicism wormed its way into Christianity. In the same way, the Western nations, Europe, sinned in that they infiltrated their own biases into the scriptures. When they saw slaves, masters, you must treat your slaves well, and all that, they literally used it to justify taking slaves. When they saw things like in the Old Testament, where God was speaking about the Hebrews the Hebrews not being allowed to take foreign wives, foreign women, because the Israelite or the Hebrew genome basically got to be kept pure. The purpose for God doing that was to keep basically religion, Judaism, holy and consecrated, and to prevent foreign gods from infiltrating the people of God. That's why he told them not to take foreign wives, because he knew they would influence them unto foreign gods. It had nothing to do with their race or their skin color or the fact that God does not want black people mixing with white people or like an interracial couple being a thing, right? The Lord has always been holy, so he can never ever say a black man can't marry a white woman. He would never say that. The reason why he told the Hebrews not to intermarry was because of false gods and the potential for intermingling idols into Judaism, idols into the Jews' camp type thing, right? But white people are sitting with the Bible. They're the ones that hooked up the first batch of Bibles that were printed, right? They actually gave us like proper. You cannot, for the life of you, write off Europe. Like, you cannot, and like, you literally cannot. Like, what are you doing? And anyway, yeah, they decided, white folk, they've been given power, and now there is a saying in this world by a writer or two that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So now when your nation is being thrived, you're powerful, you're big, your head honcho industry and trade is thriving, everything is mnander, and as a continent you're just like really burgeoning, right? You're gonna think you're the baddest, you've arrived, you're a king, everybody must worship you, type establishment thing. And so you're going to want to lord it over with an iron fist over anybody that has less money than you. That is unfortunately what is going on even currently in my life, for instance, where it is that I lost a job and people lost their minds because I don't make as much money as they do, or I don't have a particular socioeconomic standing. They treat me like I'm the scum of the earth, even though I'm still smart, I'm still viable, I'm still all these things, but I'm treated like the scum of the earth because I don't have money. That is a human problem, not a white man problem. It's a human issue. When you gain power, you become dumb. You become corrupted. You start to think other people are the bubble gum underneath your feet. It's a human issue. I've got black people doing this to me today. I've got South African citizens doing this to me today, and they're chilling in Africa. So understand, it ain't a white thing. It's a human issue. It's a human problem. And so when your nation gains power, I will make another a digression of an example. America is currently cray-cray, right? America got given power by Jesus Christ because they loved him, type thing. And then they gained the superpower status, and now look at how they're lording it over all of us with an iron fist. They are censoring the living daylights out of us. They are shadow banning our YouTube channels. They are telling us where to get off because they are the superpower of the world. They're crazy. They've gone crazy, and they're now also trying to dictate gender to us. What's male, what's female. They're trying to force Africa to embrace the woke agenda. Why? Because they're a superpower. Like, when you gain power, all of a sudden you lose your mind. You lose your cool. When other people are poor, and when you are in a position to help and serve them, you then start to dictate the terms of serving them. The terms of serving them. That's what's good. And the US has done just that. So just like America's current insanity, Europe held that pump. It was powerful. It had money. It had global dominance, and in that its dominating state, they were like, what can I do to be megalomaniacal? What can I do to control with an iron fist and keep myself strong? What can I do? I can look at the Bible and say that white people are the best. Properly, obviously, the Bible said so. Ignoring that the original people to hold the scriptures were olive-skinned. So just totally forgot that. They forgot that they were not the original chosen race, since they call themselves a supreme power. That's what's God. That's what's good. The Hebrews were the first ever chosen people by God, and they completely ignored that. So much so did they ignore it that one of our best fathers of the faith, right, that is of the Gentile generation, is Martin Luther. We love him for the Protestant Reformation, but believe it or not, Martin Luther was anti-Semitic. Martin Luther was a white man that was anti-Semitic. He hated the Jews. Unacceptable. The anti-Semitism by Martin Luther, men like Martin Luther and Augustine, was the way that it was because of the fact that they wanted to somehow believe they were in the end of the world because life was so rough thanks to persecution by the Roman Church. Yeah. And so in order to fit all of the eschatology in to the Bible, in that is the 16th century or wherever it is that he was at. Yeah. In order to fit it in, he had to get rid of all of the scriptures that spoke about God gathering his people back to the land, and also all of the scriptures that spoke about God bringing Jacob's trouble back. Bringing Jacob back to himself in Jacob's trouble. They came up with replacement theology in order to do away with the rest of Bible prophecy that had yet to be fulfilled from that time. Israel was scattered across the world at that stage. It had lost its status as a country in the Middle East. They were all over the world, and everybody was treating them like rubbish. And so Martin Luther wanted to believe that the world was ending. He imagined that the Pope was the Antichrist, and so he came up with amillennialism. Amillennialism, of which basically states that there's not going to be a millennial reign of Jesus Christ, and there's also currently the devil has been bound in chains type thing, and if at all he's going to fulfill all of the scriptures, he had to make up doctrine. He had to make up a theory to explain why it is that his era was the very last days. And in order to create that understanding, he literally created our millennialism. He created our millennialism, and in order to substantiate our millennialism, he also had to be a replacement theologist, where he said that we as Christians are now the people of God. And so we are Israel. We are spiritual Israel. And in saying we're spiritual Israel, he was able to fit the pieces of the puzzle into his own theology. So he was messed up in that regard, right? Like I said, can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because he did a really excellent job, but he was anti-Semitic. So too was Augustine. But I do believe they're in heaven. Grace abounds evermore type thing. That is because of the fact that what is this? Yeah, not because, sorry, king. So the anti-Semitism of Europe at large can be found even in some of the fathers of the faith that we love and respect today. Martin Luther, Augustine. That anti-Semitism dwelt in them because they thoroughly wanted to believe, I guess, they were the big, bad, chosen people of God. Given that now the gospel was thriving in their particular continent, that's what's good. So they wanted to write the Jews off altogether, those olive-skinned people in the Middle East that are now scattered across the world, suffering like no man's business. They wanted to write them off all together. Until, of course, in the early part of the 20th century, well, mid part of the 20th century, they got taken back to their land, and replacement theology started to walk on stilts. It was now wobbly-legged, and now today, anybody that's busy trying to still quote replacement theology is like, what are you doing? There will always be people that are trying to squeeze God's people out of the picture, like the black Hebrew Israelites who believe that they're the true chosen Hebrews. What are you doing? Look at what's going on in the Middle East. How do you account for that? You're not the one that's being clobbered here by Hamas, are you? Black Hebrew Israelites chilling in the slums of America? Like, relax. Anyway, whatever. There will always be people trying to squelch God's overall prophetic utterances to fulfill, of course, his word. There will always be people trying to second guess and cause God to look like a man that lies or a son of man that changes his mind. But as time progresses, everything just fits nicely into place, isn't it? Yeah. So granted that Martin Luther and Augustine, and I believe even John Calvin, such men, even Wesley, but I stand corrected with Wesley though, we loved them type thing, right? Really great guys, but they were anti-Semitic because of the fact that it just, they wanted to make an eschatology fit their era, but it didn't. I bet not today they're looking in heaven on some, I'm sorry, I was mistaken type thing, and the Lord will have mercy on that situation. Of course, the end times church will be the one interpreting most of eschatological prophecy, because we're in the last days. It is indeed prophesied as such in the book of Daniel that some of the things have got to be sealed until the end. So a lot of the stuff is only revealed to us now that everything is ending and over. So Christians must just be careful to not try to make the world that we're living in and the times we're in fit the scriptures to force the rapture to basically happen tomorrow, because for me it's like, don't be like Martin Luther, where your doctrine, one of your doctrines, is going to be thrown away by the church of the future because you wanted it to be right now. And for me, the biggest thing that causes me to wonder if the rapture really is going to happen in my lifetime is Gog and Magog. Like, it hasn't happened. The Psalm 83 war hasn't happened, and a lot of us want to make it fit. We want to make it fit, and our lives could come and go without it fitting, but I still believe the rapture is happening in this lifetime. If it doesn't, then many of the things I've said will make out of me a portion of Martin Luther to a certain extent, where it is that I was mistaken in one part, but largely I was right. But longing for the Lord is a thing with Christians. We always long for him to come. We always hope that it's going to be tomorrow, and every generation really thinks it's the last. So I'm hoping that I'm right. I'm hoping that we all are right that are predicting this thing. But if not, I guess I will also be looking in heaven on some oops, like Steve Urkel. Did I do that? Okay. Anyway, now that we've said that, if Martin Luther managed to find an anti-Semitic bone in his body, then you must understand that Europe, in the time when God gave it power, would also manage to find in their Christian bones a white supremacist sentiment, an anti-Semitic sentiment that would ransack the living daylights out of the world. I mean, the whole anti-Semitic violence against Jews in Germany happened because of believing that, white people are the chosen race. And that rhetoric that was inspired even in the bones of Hitler had its infancy in earlier centuries of Europe. it had brewed over very many years, and they had gained a lot of power from basically taking other people's countries. They took other people's countries. They literally rocked that. God gave them power by making them an industrial powerhouse as a continent, and they used all of their tools, all of their inventions to lord it over Africa with an iron fist, to lord it over Native Americans with an iron fist, to lord it over South Americans with an iron fist, to lord it over Australia with an iron fist. They went everywhere and just ransacked. I believe they also India. They took slaves. They created slavery across the world and used the Bible to justify it, because no one is sinless. And when people gain power, power corrupts them absolutely. In South Africa, when black men get wealthy, they feel like they can just take women mahala and for free, and everybody will just worship at their feet, even though they used to be decent guys in high school. Yeah, go ask my ex-boyfriend. Go and ask all these random, kick and boboza wearing randos frequenting corporate South Africa, what big perverts they are now that they're driving Lamborghinis. Bayahlanya, they are crazy. But back when we were all on the come-up graduates just striving to get our first permanent jobs in corporate South Africa, they were so sweet. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. These are black guys that prosper to go and grab for themselves slaves, do you understand, in women, sex slaves, because now they felt entitled. Different heights of sin. We are born dead in trespasses and sins. And what Europe did, it was full of Caucasians, right? And so their race now is attached to their insanity, even though frankly it is the general insanity of the human race. But white people made a decision to make their skin tone a thing, that now that they are an industry beast across the world, they're gonna use their steam engines and their ships and their money and their brick and mortar and everything that they've innovated with their Einstein, and then just come here and bomb our lands, take ours, everything. We don't have guns. They manufactured guns, and then next thing they rock up in Africa with us still all up in poison darting everything and arrow shooting everything, and they're like, I'm sorry, from a distance I can knock you down. So they knocked us down. They took us over in slavery. That's what's good. Sinners in the hands of a holy God. They were sinners as Christians. Grace did abound despite their white supremacy. I do believe that it abounded, because indeed the scriptures gave prescription concerning treatment of slaves, and there were slave masters that should not have been slave masters. What are you doing? That's nasty. But grace did abound. They went to heaven, were given conviction about mistreatment of slaves. So of course there were slave masters that are now burning in hell, because all they could do was whip the Kunta Kente. All they could do was ransack. All they could do was shove with an iron fist down the throats of slaves. Do you understand? The gospel. They did not lovingly train their slaves. Jesus, they were whipping Jesus into them. Those guys are not in heaven. But then there were slave masters who grabbed a lady from Angola, took her to Portugal. Do you understand what I'm saying? And upon taking that lady to Portugal, treated her well, put her in the servants' quarters, and evangelized the living daylights out of her. And she became the basic live-in domestic worker of some children in the slave master's household that respected her, loved her, and basically saw her as their nana, their auntie. She was well treated, but she was stolen from her own house, and she was stolen from her a man that she would have much rather married. She was taken away from where she would have much rather been, but she was not mistreated. Just like Potiphar did with, just like Pharaoh in Egypt did with Joseph. He was far from home, did not have an option of going back home, but he was well treated. So that's what some slave masters did. And so for those reasons, I do believe there are slave masters in heaven today that were truly born again, that should not have taken slaves, that their children, their future generations ultimately abolished slavery altogether, but they were not harsh towards their slaves because they were biblical in dealing with slaves. But the whole white supremacist mindset that spurred up in them, grace abounded because absolute power corrupts absolutely, and God knew that would happen all throughout all empires of the earth that would be given power by him. He knew that America would become crazy, but he still made them powerful. And the majority of what it is that they did was to fulfill his work. Yet in their insanity, they nonetheless sinned. And if they sin too much, that's when they start to fall apart. So in Europe, they became white supremacist. A lot of the white supremacists, if not likely the majority of them, who were harsh to slaves died in their sins, albeit professing Christianity. Those who came up with structures like the KKK in America, those who came up with Nazism, basically doctrines that were completely divorced from the scriptures, of course they're in hell. They were not saved. They had hatred in their heart. They did not bear fruit of the Holy Spirit, but there were slave masters that were saved. There were, guys, and y'all need to see that, because there is no single human being on the planet that is sinless. And there is no single society on the face of the earth that upon gaining power did not oppress a people. But there are some who have made it into heaven despite that. Look at Nebuchadnezzar. I believe he's in heaven today. He ultimately snapped out of his random rubbish. He captured and occupied God's people for a season. Darius ultimately, I believe, embraced Daniel's God after Daniel to come out alive of the lion's den. And so therefore I believe that Darius may very potentially be in heaven, even though Daniel was still just an exile, a captive in Babylon. He never got out. But despite not getting out and therefore being largely enslaved in that ecosystem, he still, some of the people that hurt him that way changed their minds and treated him well, even though they never let him go. Nothing of the human race is ever perfect. God is gathering for himself a people for his own possession. So the day is going to arrive when no one is a slave anymore, when no one is oppressed anymore. But the gospel is being proliferated on the earth by sinners. That's what you must understand. The gospel is being sent to nations across the world by sinners. And so there will be issues with the way that sinners bring the gospel in. And if at all the slave master was, all of them, that horrible and that harsh to Africa, to South America, to Australia, to America, if the slave master was that harsh to all of the places where Europe went to colonize, no one would have embraced the gospel. No one would have embraced nobody would have embraced the gospel. So all of y'all that are trying to end in 2023 colonialism impacts or effects, you are trying to take away the God of your grandmothers and your great grandmothers that embraced Christ and have no qualms with him, whether or not he was brought to their shores through white supremacy, through ships from Europe that rocked up and took an entire land, subdued a people and made them slaves. They might have not wanted to be slaves, but they were rescued from their idolatry. You cannot write off the baby with the bathwater. Do you understand? Next part.